you want to moderate it?
I guess I was wanting to do that.
So anyway, let me finish. I'm sorry. The question at hand is, can our counties afford to manage our lands? Oh, hold on, I hit the wrong button. Can we afford to not manage our lands, even at the state level? Action without knowledge is fatal. That's why we always lose. Knowledge without action is futile. Inaction produces no results. So, where would you like to start? Let's start with questions.
Can I say some things, Loma?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm over here.
Over here.
Over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll go with the panel first.
So I'm not an attorney or anything like that. So this is a very interesting presentation. But what my job is in a Republican form of government is to express the will of the people. And so I have to look at what's tactically possible and what's good strategy. And so there's a few little things that we could do. One of the things in Oregon, we're kind of weak because I'm in the minority party, and so it's hard for me to actually drag policy achievements across the goal line. But we do have things we can do. One of them, I'll put out as just a very small example, is we have the little tussle that's going on with the Elliott Forest right now, where, and I know that's not federal lands there, but it has to do with how we treat land and what the purpose is for. And so we've been able to have some gains there. We've kind of pushed them into a corner by saying that they have to, the Elliott State Forest has to produce money for schools. And if you can't produce money by cutting down trees, then you're going to have to sell it, which isn't my first choice. But we've kind of backed them into a corner like that. And so we had a huge farce in this last session of the state legislature where we ended up selling the state forest to ourselves. And it was a tough negotiation, but we negotiated it for $100 million. I don't know who wrote the check, and I don't know who cashed the check, but this is the kind of stupidity that's going on. But that's because we've pushed them in that direction there. So that's a little bit of a victory for us. There's some things going on in the state of Utah, which does have the advantage of having the proper party in the majority there. They have a little trouble with their governor there, so that's been the stepping stone there. One of the things they're doing is they're putting pressure on the federal government by just going and saying, we're going to take that state back, whatever. I think eventually in Oregon, we're going to get a Republican governor. If I was ever elected governor of the state of Oregon, and I'm not running, but if I was ever elected governor of the state of Oregon, one of the first things that I would do would be to go to public lands that the federal government claims that they own, and I would arrange a timber sale for, let's say, $1 to Seneca Timber or something like that, and have them start cutting trees on my authority there, and dare the federal government to send the United States Marine Corps in to stop them. And so I would essentially challenge the federal government and say, do you want a civil war over this issue right now? So we have some of those kinds of things. One other thing where I think that you were talking about the case for the federal government not having title to, I keep wanting to say federal lands. If I say that, I'm going to get in trouble, aren't I? But to lands that the federal government claims that they own. And your points are very good, but I think that the federal government has an even weaker case on the ONC lands.
Absolutely.
And so I think that would be a good starting point for us in Oregon to do, to start to put pressure on those lands there, to have those lands devolve back to the
They've
states.
broken a contract.
Right.
That's how that needs to be pursued.
It's more of a clear proprietary thing. You kept bringing up the proprietary thing, and the proprietary ownership of the federal ownership of proprietary land it's a proper legal use. It's when the federal government needs to have a courthouse or have a post office, and the federal government has to have those buildings, and so they have to do that. And it's proper that they go into the marketplace and they negotiate with whoever the owner of the land is. It might be a private party, it might be the state, and they say, we want to buy this land, and they buy it in competition with just maybe me. I want to put a supermarket there, and the federal government wants to put the courthouse. Well, they outbid me, and so they get the land, and so then they put a courthouse up there. But we wouldn't say that that's federal lands in the same way that the District of Columbia or Crater Lake National Park is a federal courthouse. It's just a federal
jurisdiction.
right. It's a federal operation on Oregon land there, and it's a legitimate function. But we don't claim that the Malheur National Forest is a federal operation as like a post office or a courthouse is. So, but those are some places that we have some kind of entry points, some chinks in the armor where we can get at the federal government. I think the ONCs are our best thing. Or I think if we have a governor in Oregon, they can take some pretty bold steps to do some unilateral things.
It's actually, the ONC lands is breach of contract because it states quite clearly in there what the counties can have.
Right.
And that's what they need to sue on that premise.
I think so. They need to sue, or they need to just, I think rather than to sue and then wait for the courts to act, they need to assume ownership of it and start logging operations on the ONC lands in defiance of the federal government, and let the federal government be do the suing of us. And it needs to go that way rather than us saying, well, we're going to sue you because we think you're doing it wrong. So there are some bold steps. I think a county could do that. I think the state could do that. So the ONC lands, that's one of our best things. When you talked about disposal there, this disposal in the ordinary sense that you and I think of it, we think of I'm getting rid of something or I'm throwing it away, or in the case of the lands here, that I'm devolving it to the states there. But I think that in a legal sense, the term dispose of can also mean to create a disposition for, i.e., I own a piece of land and I have decided that the disposition of this land from now on is going to be an airport or a hospital or whatever. And so that disposing of can be thought of in those terms. It doesn't mean that you get rid of the land. It means that you create a purpose for the land. And so in that case, that's a little bit weaker case there. I think ONC is the place to go for us on that.
Well, and I think I have to argue with you a little bit. I think what we need to do is to go back to a dictionary of that era to understand what dispose of meant.
Partly that, and then partly just what does the law mean? And then I have to take a step back because I'm not a lawyer, and so
Right.
I won't argue with you too hard on that.
Right.
But just
And the ONC is different because, like I said, that was a contract. But as far as the forests go in our county lands, this is the solution. You have the paperwork right there in your hands. Hire Doyle. Yeah, it's going to cost the county some money, but it's going to be the best thing you've ever done. 5 counties around him are doing it. They're having success.
And I'm not a county official, so I'll have to talk to my
Right. And that's
friends in the
why
county.
this would lead into the workshop with him. Because everybody that has done it followed what he's doing. There's been no repercussions. So, any other questions on the panel?
I'm going to have to leave, I think, because I think my wife is not doing so well in the heat here. So I think I'm going to.
Well, thank you
I'm
for
gonna take
being
off.
here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Can I? I'll give you this back, but can I keep the other book?
This one?
If you promise me that you will read through it
It'll be in good hands. Yes.
and then tell me what your thoughts are afterwards.
Good. I
Because-
will. I'll trade you that for a Polk County printout of what the codes are on the lands.
Okay, on your way out, stop by and grab a card off of our table.
I will.
Go to the website, contact me through the website.
Good, and I'll leave you one of my
I'll
cards.
provide it for you.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Good job, Mike. You want me to start talking?
Do you have any questions or any comments?
Questions? I don't have any questions. Dave Honeycutt, Oregon into action.
Is that on?
I think so.
Can you hear him?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I don't have any questions. I've got a couple of concerns, practical concerns. As all of you know, our state is controlled by essentially Portland, and the rest of us are just here to do the bidding of the interests of the city of Portland. So I'm not sure, even if we could get a court to rule that the federal government doesn't, the state holds title to the lands that the federal government is claiming that they hold title to. I'm not sure it would do us any good.
Well, actually, the court's not where you want to be. I've just given you the way to do it by 5 other counties that have done
Well,
it.
the problem with that is that, at least in Oregon, and I don't know about the other states, counties are political subdivisions of the state.
So,
So the
Doesn't matter.
legislature has the ability to do essentially what they want to the counties, and the counties are subject to the dictates of the state. If the state held title, or if the state legislature controls, the state government controls what happens on federal lands, we would have statewide centralized land use planning on federal lands, and I'm not sure that that puts you in any better position, and actually would probably argue it puts you in a worse position.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but the original intent of the Constitution was not to dispose the land to the states. It was to dispose it into private ownership. And the reason for that is because the individual was supposed to have the right to own property of which he could gain wealth from. That was the purpose. So the federal government is supposed to dispose that land into private ownership. The only time it goes back to the state is if they cannot relinquish it into private ownership. Then it's supposed to go back to the state.
I can talk to that too.
I'm sure you can.
And great, and I appreciate, believe me, I appreciate the presentation. My organization, we deal with protecting private property owners, and we deal with the laws as they are and as they have been interpreted and enforced by, excuse me, by the state of Oregon, by the Oregon appellate courts, by the U.S. appellate courts and the U.S. Supreme Court. And so I might not be the right person to be on this panel. What I'm telling you is, until we see this, what you're talking about, in order for it to occur, you would need a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. Because what you want to happen, I just don't think will happen.
It's happening. It's happening in 5 counties in Arizona and in counties in 11 other counties.
Yeah, see, the thing about it is the law is the same. This state, every state, it doesn't matter. Congress wrote that, gave us the option to use it. We can use it. The courts have no say in it. So once the county takes control over that whole
Lead agency.
takes lead agency, the courts have no say. And once they've taken lead agency and they've invited all the parties involved to come, and the ones who don't come have no standing, so they can't sue. Once they do that and take control, the federal government's out of it as far as suing goes. The whole purpose of them suing is because they get big money, these people.
what I forgot to put in this, and I may have missed it in my notes, once the county takes control, they write the resolution under health, safety, and welfare, they certify that ordinance, they call the meeting. This eliminates the Equal Access to Justice Act. How many of you know what that is? It's called EJA, okay? That's where the environmentalists come in and they start suing these federal agencies. They can only sue a federal agency. They can't, it's not, they make up to $750 an hour. And since from 2000 to 2011, $37 million was paid to attorneys in 3,300 lawsuits under the EJA program. This eliminates that. They got to spend their own money to come down into state or federal court, and they're not doing it. State or county court. They're not doing it. We have a proven track record. That's why we need to have the class with Doyle, because then it gives those groups or public officials that are doubting and saying no, the evidence is put in front of them. I just listed everything that you will get with Doyle. You know, why would the EPA ask him to come and help rewrite the WOTUS if it wasn't factual? Why would Congress come out and say this is a solution to our western counties if what he presented to them wasn't factual evidence and lawful? Okay.
He's got it.
Oh.
Yeah.
take
Over California, Monterey, and ceded back to the state of California.
Mhm.
The government says we don't want it,
Yep,
right?
yep. Exactly right.
What did he say?
Exactly what everything just
Nate, come up here.
Or here's the,
And while he's coming up, I can talk a little bit more.
and then the mic, please.
The city of Tacoma gave land to establish Fort Lewis up in Washington. And when Fort Lewis no longer exists as a fort, it will revert back to the city of Tacoma in Pierce County. Another couple things here to think about, going down your track, is what national forests have paid back payment in lieu of taxes to your counties? They haven't. They are supposed to. They haven't been doing it. So one, if you're talking about a court case, that might be one to go after in your case for property rights.
Yeah.
Another one, and one final point on this is, in Washington State and in many states across the country, if the state takes back control of current lands managed by the federal government, if they sell those lands off, 95 cents on the dollar goes back to the U.S. Treasury. Okay? 5 cents on a dollar goes to the state or for revenue generation. Another tack that you can take in Washington, I don't know if it's true in Oregon, but two sections of every township in the state of Washington must produce revenue for the purpose of funding schools in counties. If that's the case here,
It's the same in
the state's not doing that. I can assure you they're not. Washington isn't, and nor is Oregon. So that would be another tack that you could take in your particular case, I think.
Well,
And
in,
then Nate,
in that case, that's where Liberty Watch would come in Oregon, to help our groups strategize to use this kind of strategy.
Right.
Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah. You bet.
Go ahead, Nate.
on my comment.
Yes.
So for those of you who didn't hear me back there, my comment, to back up everything Loma said, the state of California, the federal government has ceded Fort Ord Military Reservation in Monterey. They've also ceded Alameda Naval Air Station back to the state, which backs up Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. The state of California ceded it to the federal government for ports, dockyards, and other needful things. Now they've received it back, and now they get stuck with the price tag of cleaning it up too. So,
One of the reasons why they did.
Yeah. Any other statements from the panel?
Question?
We'll be right with you. Thank you for being patient.
Go ahead. My question is not
Yeah, how many counties in Oregon has this resolution?
None,
None.
none.
And is it possible to write this up as an ordinance in case you have a county commissioners who don't want to capitulate with the group of people who are trying to propose this to the county commissioners? And that way we force the county commissioners through an initiative process to basically take the lead agency position.
Yes.
I would think so. See, that's something when you're thinking about this, don't have, whatever county you take on first, don't have them pass a resolution, have them word it so it's as an ordinance, and then I can take that county.
They write the resolution, then they write the ordinance.
Okay.
And they're on the table out there if you want to look at them.
Perfect, because I can't do nothing with a resolution. I
Right,
can't
you
file
have to
an
have the
initiative on it.
ordinance.
And it can't be
Yeah.
administrative because it has to be legislative, and this would fit within the legislative category. So if you can get them to pass that ordinance, and you find the county commissioners who, and I guarantee you, I've got two phony balonies sitting up there in my county commissioner. One of them is named Melissa Cribbins. I call her the 3 L's from hell. She's a lawyer, she's a lobbyist, and she's a liberal. And I guess the 4th L is she's alive. So, I'm sorry. So what I would like to see done is whatever ordinance, because there's going to be a lot more counties out there, such as Douglas, Lake, Malheur, counties who have Republican commissioners who may be more applicable to passing that. And then once you get it passed, you can take it to the groups who, if they can't get the board to do it, then they can do it themselves. And
Right, and you're right, and this is the purpose of this presentation today, was to provide a class And however, the jurisdiction committee wants to promote it with Jeff Krupp's help, of course, is to get it promoted, get it advertised, and get people to the class so that they have an opportunity to learn what you've learned. And I hope that it came across where you understand it. Believe me, this was not an easy thing to put together, but
There's a lot of material, and there's no way
There is.
anyone, and you know, you and I have been working on this for a long time,
Yeah.
and you just told me things today that I wasn't even aware of. So, you know, it's something that, I thank goodness there's people like you getting
Yeah.
involved in doing a history, and anyone out there who ever says there's nothing left to be done because the spots and positions are taken, this is a pure example of how going back and finding out legislation that has been passed and how it's been enacted and how we got into this position helps guys like me, because I'm in the middle of the battle. I don't have time to look back and go and check those
Right,
types of facts.
right.
So thank you.
and you're welcome. Any other statements? Could you pass the microphone down?
Well, I always, what's it on?
It's ours.
Oh, I'm sorry, I turned it off.
Oh. I'm always of the, it's always easier to ask forgiveness than permission. So, you know, I mean, as a governor, kind of over the last 4 years when I've been running, you know, Oregon's a sovereign state, and these lands belong to the state of Oregon, you know, and it's kind of like what Mike was talking about. Let's elect a conservative governor. We just make some signs that say state on them, and we go up to those signs in the forest, and where it says national forest, we just stick state right over top of it, and we start logging that stuff. We start cleaning it up and force them to actually, you know, take us to court. You know, because I believe that these lands actually belong to the state of Oregon, and we have jurisdiction over them, and they don't have. And they're in breach in so many different ways on
But this is the way
Yeah.
of eliminating all of that.
yeah,
I mean, like I said, there was 5 county attorneys
right.
that were supervisors. They verified. They had one that wasn't sure. They wrote the resolution, they certified the ordinance, they did all the steps. And when you do it exactly like they laid it out, they don't do anything.
Right, right.
And then they get all.
Because they can't get, well, she's talking about the attorneys don't come through federal court to sue you because they can't get any money.
Okay, but.
No.
Is that what you're saying? So you're saying when they go, if they have to go to local
Yes.
court, they're not gonna get
Yeah,
paid
they
for
have
it, so
those-
they're not gonna do it.
No.
They have to go state or
They,
local.
and they haven't.
Right,
Okay,
right.
but-
The one thing that I,
This is my lawyer friend, he's got concern. Go ahead.
My concern is, what's the role of the state?
The state doesn't have any role in it because
This-
the county is sovereign over the state and they've done it lawfully. They followed the procedure
In
they
Oregon,
need to do it.
again, under Oregon law, counties are political subdivisions
Doesn't
of the
matter.
state. The county doesn't have sovereignty. The county, the only authority the county has is what the state of Oregon gives it.
let me
Are
ask
you
you,
an attorney?
Yes,
Then please call Paul Meyer
I know
from
Paul.
Douglas County and ask him what he thought of Doyle's presentation because he's the one that said it might actually work.
I'll do that.
Okay.
You might contact Doyle.
Yeah, and contact Doyle too. If you'd like to have his phone number, I'd be happy to give it to you.
you're correct in that fact. And didn't the legislature try and combine 2 counties here not too long ago?
No, we ran a bill for the first time in 2013, I believe, where we changed boundaries. The legislature has in the past changed boundaries from county to county. There's a meets and bounds description in statute for every county. We've done that in the past. We sponsored legislation to change boundaries from one, to move property into private property from one county into another. And you can do that. But again, well, I've said what, you know, I appreciate the presentation, I appreciate the arguments, I appreciate the theories. The problem that I have, number one, I represent an organization where we're trying to make things happen for property owners that, you know, with laws on the books that we can change and we can actually pass. And number two, I'm not sure that Oregonians would be any better off if the state of Oregon controlled federal lands than we would if the federal government controls federal lands. Our politics aren't likely
Yeah,
to
I
change
understand.
here.
Would us being a home rule state doesn't really put us on an equal footing to the legislation on that grounds?
No, the Oregon appellate courts have interpreted our home rule charter provisions in the Oregon Constitution in a way that really makes them, for all intents and purposes,
Useless.
meaningless.
Yeah. That's what I was afraid of.
Well,
I like the beard though. That's good.
well, the thing is, you know, with the state land use plan that we put in effect in the 70s, I mean, I know Bill's had conversations with the people that are on the commission. It's like, you know, you guys enjoy this now because this LCDC has huge powers. But if you elect a Republican governor who appoints 7 rural-friendly commissioners to that changes drastically overnight. You can change that, where you can push all the state monopoly that they have at the top. You can get that back to the local level, and you can have counties making decisions on land use planning, and you can have, you know,
Which is unconstitutional.
well, it's the system that we have now. But what I'm saying is, a conservative governor that I'm a real estate agent, so I've been dealing with personal property rights and grazing rights, and I understand what the fight's been about. But trying to get other realtors involved in that, I mean, it's like pulling teeth, you know. But if you elect a governor that actually puts 7 members on that commission, right? Because right now the fight's over affordable housing. It's tied up with urban growth boundary expansions that cities and counties aren't even bothering to do because they're not going to get anywhere with LCDC. You put somebody in there that you put somebody in there that's a constitutional governor, you know, who conservative, that puts the right people on that board to where they can push all that power back down to the local level and get those done.
If you were governor, would you abolish LCDC?
The first thing we would do is get the people on there to get the thing changed and then work toward doing that. But like right now though, it has huge powers to move it in a direction that we need to move it in.
Right.
But I mean, we gotta work within the existing laws now. That requires something that the legislature has to do. But as governor, I can do that like that. See what I'm saying? So I'll let the lawyer answer that.
I think your question is, can the governor ditch the 19 statewide land use planning rules? And the answer to that is no, but the governor can make the commission that the governor appoints can make the 19 statewide land use planning goals, can amend them to the point where they basically give the counties the ability, like the other 49 states, where the counties have the ability to essentially do the land use planning, and the cities. Where we return to
do or not to do.
To do or not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, what's the term on a LCDC commissioner?
It's 4 years and
4 years.
4-year terms for LCDC commissioners. The real problem that we've had in this state on that, and we're moving, I don't want to move off topic from where you were going.
Right.
The problem what we've had with LCDC in Oregon is that ever since the commission was created, with the exception of Vicatia, and Vic was really a proponent of Senate Bill 100, we haven't had a governor who's been willing to put the people on the commission that will make the calls that Bruce is talking about.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about something that happened in Roseburg, and Steve and I have had this conversation. And I believe that this is one venue that we really, as the people, really need to consider. And this started with me with a community lobbying our city council to deny a store owner the right to trade in commerce, to get a alcohol license, because they were afraid the off-fall from that was going to affect their homes. Yeah, it might have, but that's not his fault. Once he gets that that license, the only person that has any authority to do anything to him is Oregon Liquor, OCL, or whatever it's called.
OLLC.
But they were successful. 100 of them petitioned the city council to deny that business a right. He has a right to trade and commerce. And when you have an environmental group, what's Robertson's name? Something Wild of Oregon? No, it's Oregon Wild. They have board members, all right? They're lobbying our county commissioners and our state commissioners and our legislators to deny you and I a right. They damage us. Let's start going after their boards and suing them for damages because those board members are doing it. They're liable. That's where we need to start. And it's just like I told those 100 people, I wasn't at the meeting, you guys are liable because you're damaging that business owner. He could turn around and sue you for everything you own.
They kicked you off of the...
They kicked me off of NeighborWorks because of that. Anyway, okay, are we ready for questions from the audience?
All right. Who's first? Go ahead. Go ahead. Hold on.
Hold on 1 second. Did you have something?
Well, I'm not sure if it was a question. It's
Hold
more
on.
it was more addressing what Dave next to me said, you know, about how much control the state would have or how much control the counties would have. You know, as for mining, it is the federal act, the federal mining law that saves us from a tyrannical Oregon. And, you know, our place in Oregon's economy has everything to do with where that jurisdiction is going to fall.
Sure.
And so that is a question I would really like to know.
Yeah.
We have a real problem with states and the federal government protecting private property rights. And if you own that property, that mine, if you actually owned it, had physical title to it, I mean, you own it under federal law to some extent, or whatever you use it for. But if you had legal ownership and had title, the state's not going to protect your rights because they pass laws that allow them to come in and regulate what you do on your private land, which was not the original intent of this country. So where does the state get the right, this is just a question, where does the state get the right to pass a law dictating what you do on your property unless you harm your neighbor's property? And then, even then, it's the neighbor's responsibility, not the state. If that isn't tyranny to the nth extent, I don't know what is. That was not the original intent of this country. But that's where we're at.
You have to popularize it.
Popularize it. There you go.
Polarize it.
Question?
And then polarize it.
Well, my question kind of goes back to Ms. Darnell's answer there and or question. And Mr. Honeycutt, as I understand, while listening to Doyle Shanley speak at one point, he had said that he has looked at the Oregon Constitution. Now, I'm a 55-year Oregonian, born and raised here in Cottage Grove, right? Never seen it. Shame on me, right? But he says that according to Oregon's Constitution, we're very lucky that the forests and possession of the forest would go to the county's jurisdiction. Now, that would be something someone would have to check out because he referred to the Constitution. But I do remember him saying that, and that's exactly why us miners are scared. We don't want our fate to be in the hands of the state of Oregon because they don't do anything using science unless it benefits them, and then their science is all chopped up and put together. So, anyway.
She's had her hand up for a long time, I'm sorry.
I'm Claudia Wise. I'm Minerals and Mining Advisory Council for the U.S. And so is Joe right there. My question is, you were talking about sovereignty of lands for the state. If it was granted or conveyed to mining districts before that, 1872, you were talking 1905, 1911, then we have a right over the state for that land. So it's not part of the state, even if we took back federal land. The mining claims and the mining districts predate that.
The grandfather's in.
And the other question I had, or comment, was that in California, they tax mining claims as if they were well, they are personal property, but they're on federal land.
Right.
So I think I heard you guys say that state could not tax persons on federal lands.
Well,
Is that right?
Well, it depends upon what the state has made my understanding, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, is the state has made an agreement with the federal government for them to allow them to do that. Because they'd have to come to an agreement.
No, they did not make an agreement. The state just passed it and the miners are paying it.
Shame on the miners.
I just texted Doyle and asked him how hiring him would benefit your miners. So stop by the booth, get our card, and email me, and I'll let you know what he says, because he may not be able to come right today.
So any of you have any comments on what you just said?
Well, there's a distinction between mining on private.
Hold on, I'm getting to him.
All I was going to say is there's a distinction between mining on private land, which is regulated under Chapter 517 of the Oregon statutes, and mining on federal lands. And so we have a legislature, as Karen knows, that is hostile to certain types of mining and not so hostile to other types of mining, as witnessed by legislation that was passed, 2 bills that were passed this past legislative session. But there's a lawsuit now in the Ninth Circuit that will resolve at least our state's efforts to try and limit in-stream suction dredge mining. And we'll wait to see what happens with the outcome of that case. It all centers on the Granite Rock case, where the U.S. Supreme Court said that the states have authority to regulate mining on federal lands if it was done for environmental purposes, but not for land use purposes. So the question is whether Senate Bill 838, our legislative effort to try and regulate Karen and the other suction dredge miners, whether or not that regulation is considered a land use regulation or an environmental regulation.
That's up to science to be environmental, isn't it? There's no science.
What was weird is that the Supremes never really gave us any
And
idea.
that would be where they would have concurrent jurisdiction.
Yeah.
The VA, for instance, in Roseburg, the Fed does not own the land. They lease it from the county, and it's concurrent.
For $1.
Well, 50
I'd
cents.
be $1.50 for cheap.
As far as environmental regulation, even the state and the EPA, DEQ, whoever, that cannot materially interfere with mining. It's in the 1872 Mining Act. So what you say is what they're doing, but it's not legal.
Well, the only response that I would have to that is that it's legal because the U.S. Supreme Court in the Granite Rock case said it was.
The United States Supreme
Yes,
Court
they
as far
didn't
as
bring
right,
up
right?
some important points in that case, which they will now.
And I said, as I said before, judicial interpretation is what's wrong with the country. They have to apply the Constitution, not interpret it. Okay, next question. Thank you for waiting.
So it was mentioned a little bit, and I think just glossed over, but I think it's such an important part, an important point, which is we have a special authority here in Oregon called County Home Rule Charter. It's a constitutional charter written in there. And there's a document online, it's done from the Association of Oregon Counties, that talks all about county home rule. And what it says in there is that the U.S. Advisory Commission in 1981 said that Oregon counties actually have a larger degree of local discretionary authority than counties in any other state. And I think that county home rule is crucial to solving many of these issues, from land rights to civil rights issues to everything. And it was mentioned that there was kind of refuted by an appellate court. And I'm curious, like, how good, oftentimes they bring these cases to these courts that are really flimsy. But if you brought in a good case using county home rule, that you might actually be able to get somewhere. And so I'm just thinking if you guys could talk a little bit more about the county home rule authority and how it might be very influential in Oregon and actually better serving Oregon than, say, Utah or some of these other counties that don't have that constitutional home rule authority.
You want to take that?
I got a little something to say on that.
John Parker?
One of the problems that you're finding with the home rule charter is that they've got many preemption laws that preempt the counties and the cities from enacting a lot of different laws. And I'll give you an example. ORS 166.170. I don't know if you ever heard of that. That's the gun preemption law. Now, it was meant for a good thing because a lot of conservatives and a lot of pro-gun people supported the law because there were cities out there passing their own gun legislation which were stopping people who had carry concealed license from being able to do that in their cities. And so they create these preemption laws. And so you've got to watch out what's on the books that basically have nullified the home rule charter. And like Dave said, there's been several court cases that have basically eroded it to the point where it's the validity of it is almost in question. So and I found that out through, I was going from county to county to pass the Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance. How many of you have heard this? Okay, the Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance, it doesn't regulate one gun or one bullet. All it does is it allows your county not to put any resources towards the implementation or the enforcement of bad gun laws. And in fact, if you look at it, it's almost similar to the state's immigration law where they tell your county sheriffs and your police not to cooperate with immigration. Well, we figured we'd write a law preserving our gun rights based on that same principle, because if the state can tell the federal government that we don't want to enforce good federal immigration laws, then we thought our county should be able to pass laws that would say that we don't have to enforce bad gun laws here in the state of Oregon. And so 5 counties right now have the Second Amendment Preservation Ordinance, and they have not challenged it because of home rule. And because of home rule, I think that it is one of the reasons that it hasn't seen any challenges in the court. But who knows, me trying to find any logic in a liberal is, I'll give that up.
Actually, our September class is going to be on just this subject because they've done a petition in Douglas County on home rule charter. So, if you guys want to come to that, it's the 18th of September at Elmer 6 to 9 in Roseburg.
What does it do with your commissioners?
It goes to 5. It goes to 5.
Useless.
And they only receive a small amount for travel as far as pay goes. And then, if I'm correct on this, and John can kind of sort us in, and then you hire a county administrator.
And so basically you have a rubber stamp to go along the bureaucrat. We defeated that in Coos County, by the way, just a couple of years ago.
You basically strip the voter of actually running the county.
Right.
Is what you do.
Caution on that. Okay, we have that in Washington State.
Yes.
We have county executives who have taken away from the power of the sheriff, the chief elected officer in the county, and many of the commissioners have ceded a lot of the decision-making to the county executive.
Yeah.
So what you have, in essence, is a dictator in your county.
Absolutely.
And the sheriff has to, and appointed, the sheriff has to answer to those people. So caution on that. And one other thing on growth management. I want to go back to that for half a second. We are seeing our Growth Management Act in the state of Washington ruining our state. It's concentrated people in the cities in little houses that are set. Nate and I were talking about this on the way up today. Where, your house, you got 6 houses on a quarter acre of land. And, they may be 3,000 square foot houses, but they are stacked so tight that it's unmanageable. And there's one other piece with this. We just had a Supreme Court decision in Washington called the Hearst decision, which what it does is it restricts property owners to drill private wells on their land without a full study. And that has set that state, it has decreased property values in that state to something you can't even believe.
What's an
So-
average study?
Huh?
What's an average study?
$100,000
Woo, dog.
for the property owner. Watch those issues because they're coming this way.
So, well, just, what is Agenda 21?
It all conforms.
Okay, anybody else? Well, we can't hear you, honey. You may not need it, but you're gonna get it.
Hearst is,
Who ceded the Crater Lake National Park to the
State
Fed?
legislature.
The state. So they've got the authority,
There was a record.
or they just assumed the authority?
It was donated. Go ahead.
I believe it, if I'm correct, someone correct me if I'm not, it was donated to the state, had to be donated to the state first, I believe, and then it was transferred to
By a
federal.
county agency?
No, it was.
No, by a private owner.
It was a private owner that donated it to the state to be a public.
That's what gave the state authority to cede it to the Fed,
Yeah.
which is unique. I guess we can't use that.
And there is a record of it, whether or not it was done lawfully. I mean, you can do with your land what you want to do with your land. Any other questions?
Yeah, see, the problem I have with that is that the federal government has no authority under the Constitution to accept the donation.
Right.
So it would have had gone to the state, and the state would have had to keep it. There's just no authority there. But the legislatures and Congress are overstepping their bounds, have been forever, and until we stand up and do something about it, they're going to continue to do so.
Any other questions or statements or?
Yeah, I have one further thing. Something a little statement to public people who are running for public office. It's offensive to me, just to me, this is my own personal statement. It's offensive to me when the state owns anything. State owns nothing. It's owned by the people. States have no rights, the federal government has no rights. They have authority and power, and they use power well more than they use authority. So,
Occupying a public building?
yeah, or Maui wildlife refuge, for example.
Bob?
The point I'm trying to make here is that it comes across better to me when you say the land should be taken back by the people of the state of Oregon and not by the state, because it puts the state above the people. Who created the state? The people did. Who created the federal government? The people did through the states. This is something we need to remember that we forget.
And if any of you out there have any questions after this is over, Dwayne, about the Malheur, what happened to him on the Malheur incident, he said he's welcome to speak with any of you. So I'd like to thank the panel. I'd like to thank everybody that came today. It was an honor to present this to you. I hope that the jurisdiction committee can put a class together and that the minors will show. I'm curious to see what Doyle would say too, because he's got it all. It's all right there and it's working. So thank you and travel safe, please.
My one last comment is that one of the reasons why we have all the issues in this state is because of the federally held land within the state. If they didn't hold that land, the state would have a lot less power over us inside the state.
within the West.
West.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That's why we all got to work together.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain's over. Absolutely.